Today our guest is Othman Kammah. Did I say your name right?
Yes, Hugo, you did.
Who is a photographer from Toronto originally, or maybe from somewhere else, but who has been living in Toronto, Canada for a while. And recently you told us you moved to San Francisco, to the sunny southern, well, not southern, but sunny California. Anyway, so you're in just after a move, and I just want our listeners to know that yesterday was your birthday, so happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thanks, guys.
And we have Mathieu Gasquet, as usual, here, who is another mover, so everybody's moving. So, Mathieu, where did you move?
We moved to Wales. We are currently in mid-Wales right now in a small town called Tywyn. And we just moved yesterday, so it's our first day in Wales, and looking good. Was very sunny day today, so we left cloudy and rainy Turin to come in a wonderful sunny Wales. So that was unexpected, but good surprise.
That doesn't sound right?
Well, it doesn't.
From Italy to sunny Britain.
Congratulations, Mathieu.
So, Othman, tell us a bit about yourself, about the story of your life, if you will, or especially the story of your photography. How did you get started? What kind of photography you do? And yeah, please.
Sure. So I most of my life can be described as traveling. Since I was very young, my parents and I traveled very, very much. And throughout these travels, I always noticed when I was younger that my dad was carrying a camera. His camera at the time was the very famous Canon AE1, the film camera. And so that was my introduction to photography. When he would hand it to me, pre-set up, and all I had to do was just take the photo. What I really enjoyed about it was, coming back from trips or sitting down and looking through those photos. My parents were really kind in maintaining photo albums for me growing up. So I actually have physical albums of almost my entire youth with printed photographs. And I think that was the catalyst that made me fall in love with photography, was the ability to capture moments and enjoy them later. So after a while, I kind of, life got in the way, school got in the way, and I kind of lost touch with photography. Then a few years ago, I decided to look into it again, see if this is something that I'd be interested in again, and if I was any good at it. And so I picked up a digital camera, and things went from there.
Are you now a full-time photographer?
No, I'm not a full-time photographer. I do a lot of paid assignments, but it's not my. I don't make a living out of it now.
I want to go back to what you said about your father, your family, giving you printed pictures of you and the family. I guess it's a bit sad that when I think about it, I have printed photos of my daughter, who is now 16. But I think that when she has children of her own, they probably will never have a printed photo of themselves. That's a bit sad, isn't it?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's we went from having to print photographs in order to experience them to this era of instant gratification, where you can just take a photo, put it on the internet, and everyone can see it, but you can never have it or find it in a box 50 years from now or something. So I agree with you. I do love what companies like Fuji is doing with bringing back like Instax photography to top of mind, where people can take photos and have that instant gratification, but also have a physical print. And I hope people, I hope that brings people back into film photography for sure.
Yeah, that would be cool. So, what kind of equipment you started out with?
So when I got back into photography, I dabbled with obviously DSLRs like everyone a few years ago. I shot Nikon for a little while, and then at that point, I think it was someone that I met in the street introduced me to Olympus. They had an Olympus OMD EM5 that I was just blown away with. And it was mainly not only really the size, but what he was able to achieve with the camera. And at the time, mirrorless cameras weren't as mainstream as they are today, so I knew nothing about it. So I decided to take the plunge, picked up an OMD EM5, and I loved it. And so getting rid of the weight, paring it down to smaller, lighter, and just almost as good, if not as good, equipment was what made me switch to mirrorless at that point. From there, I came across the Fuji X100, and at the time I used to shoot a lot of street photography, and it just seemed perfect for it. Shy of having to buy a Leica with a 35mm Summicron, the X100 seemed like the best thing for me, and so it went from there.
What kind of photography do you do?
So at the time, I did a lot of street photography. I now focus more on, I almost want to call it detailed portraiture. So I put my own spin on portraits of people. I like to portray people in a way that other people don't necessarily see them. So I focus on the details and what make them unique.
And you do that for your assignment, for your job? Is that what you do?
Yeah, so I've done that for friends. I've done that for people I met in the street. I've done that for paid assignments. Yeah.
Yeah, but where do you put out your work most? I know you have a blog, but do you also use other outlets like Flickr, 500px, Facebook, Google+?
Yeah, so I have my blog, which I can show you in a second, and I actually probably will explain what I mean by detailed photography. And I also use Twitter, as Mathieu can attest. That's how we met. And then I tried to use Facebook. It didn't seem like, for me, it didn't seem like the right thing. So Flickr ended up being another place where I started posting pictures. I got a lot of great feedback through that. Surprisingly, very constructive criticism on Flickr. Yeah.
So you mentioned your blog. You want to you gave us, our viewers, some curiosity about your detailed style of portrait. Sure. Maybe you can share your screen and show.
So let me open this up. All right. So
of course, if you have any questions, you just go ahead and ask.
So are you able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is my website. It's kammah.ca, as you can see at the top. So this is an essay I did called Sound, and the way this came about is we had organized a Fuji Tuesday walk, which we can touch on in a little bit, but we had organized a Fuji Tuesday walk with the Fuji guys, and throughout this walk, I kept noticing that this one person, namely, this guy here, that was carrying around a little case, and after a little bit, I stopped him and I said, "Hey, what do you have in your case?" And so what he ended up having was a ukulele. And so I always like to start my visual essays or any posts with the quote related to that essay. And so this one is kind of close to my heart because I grew up very, very close to music, and this one kind of made me smile. So it says, as you can see, there's something about the ukulele that just makes you smile. It makes you let your guard down. It brings out the child in all of us. So we sat down and we chatted about, why he liked the ukulele, and then we went on to do this shoot. And so, like I said earlier, I focus on detailed portraiture, and so I'll focus on elements like, hands and fingers and tattoos, rather than just a full body shot or head shot. And so, as you can see, for example, with this photo, again, it shows these tattoos, but it also shows him playing the ukulele, or this one here that shows what I like to think his focus while playing the ukulele. So the focus was on his eye and just kind of the action of the ukulele playing down here. So that's what I meant by detailed photography. Another good example is this one, which I call details. And so this one was focused on the unique attributes of each person. So in this case, something like the hair. So you can see that the main focus of this image was, in Jackie's hair in this case, or her nose and her nose ring specifically. But I think one thing I love the most about this type of photography is how much you connect with your subject. It allows you to get really, really close and break down some barriers, because a lot of people are afraid of the way they look on camera, but if you're focusing on one thing, they're more comfortable. And surprisingly, the closer you get, the more comfortable they get, from my experience. So yeah, that's basically what I like to do.
How do you interact with them when you start the shooting? Do you start right away with some details, or you start with some classic shots and then you get closer and closer?
That's a really good question. So I like to interact with people a lot. That's a lot of people that have walked around the streets with me will tell you that I make friends very easily, and I get really up close in people's faces while taking photos of them. But to answer your question, I like to just chat. Put the camera away and just establish a connection, and just they're not my subject. They're just another human being, and we talk and find things to bond over, and that helps them relax a lot. And once someone is relaxed, it's a lot easier to work with them, as you know. Mm-hmm. So from there, I like to talk to them about what they like about themselves, what they don't like about themselves, and then the challenge and what makes it fun is trying to make them, appreciate an image of something they don't like about themselves. Like, for example, if someone tells you, "I don't like my nose," and yet at the end of the day, you have a great picture of their nose. But it's just fun, and we do take a few shots, just for fun, of like not detailed, but when it really gets serious, we're sometimes this close to each other.
How long would you say you chat and get to know the person before starting to take the photographs? It's like half an hour. It's like,
yeah, sometimes it takes 10-15 minutes. Sometimes it takes half an hour. It's really just up to that person's level of comfort. When you can tell that they're relaxed and open and ready to go, that's the right time.
All right.
Do you take those with the X100S?
So those two that I've showed you were actually both taken with the two sets that I showed you were taken with an X Pro 1 at the time. I've
So what is in your gear bag at the moment?
So at the moment I have an XT1, and I've been going back to shooting film a lot. So, but a lot of people will tell you that I'm famous for switching up gear here and there quite often. The idea is that I just, it's not a knock on any brand or any camera, but I just haven't I haven't felt a connection or haven't really bonded with any camera on the market yet. The only one I really did on a film level is the Leica M6. I just have this somehow very organic connection with it. And on a film level, it was really the X Pro one. So I'm really excited to see what Fuji is going to do with that model in the very near future.
So, well, the M6, you're still mirrorless, so it's all good.
Exactly.
We accept it.
What's your favorite lens?
Altogether?
Yeah, I mean, in general, for the Fuji system, but also for the Leica too.
So for Fuji, it's definitely and hands down, the Fuji, the 60mm macro. You know, a lot of people hate that lens because it can be really slow. It's also really old, and the external focusing gets really long. But it just works for me. And especially on newer bodies, it works a lot better. So on an X-T1, it focuses faster and better than, say, on an X Pro one. Sorry. So yeah, it's definitely that one. And then a very close second would be the 35mm 1.4. That one is just stellar. Yeah.
Yeah, these were my first two lenses I got for my XC2. First the 60 and then the 35, so I can completely relate to that.
Yeah.
I saw that the photos that you showed us were all black and white. Is that something that you always do or normally do? Do you ever shoot color?
That's a good catch. So I started shooting color when I got back into photography. I just never, I was never happy with the color work of my photos, and then eventually I started, just converting images to black and white and seeing what would happen, and I started liking it a lot more. I felt it for me personally, and I know there's a lot of photographers that can do this very easily in color, but for me personally, allowed me to kind of break down barriers and just focus on really what I was trying to show. There was no distractions. So I started shooting exclusively in black and white for a long time. And then I was challenged by a few people to see if I could shoot in color and what I could do with it. And so I slowly started getting back into color, but my comfort level is definitely in black and white.
And what is your process in shooting black and white? Do you set the camera to black and white, one of the black and white modes of the Fuji, and so what you see in the viewfinder is black and white? Do you shoot JPEG or do you shoot RAW and convert later? How much is straight out of camera?
So I do leverage the live view in the viewfinder, like you mentioned. I do set presets to black and white, so what I see is what I'm going to get. I love playing with tones of gray, and so with the black and white finder, when you're looking at the live view of what you're actually going to get, you can play with the light that you have in your image and trying to get different shades of gray based on what you're looking at. So obviously, the lighter it is, the whiter it's going to be, and so you can play with the light to get different shades, which I really enjoy. As far as the process, I still shoot RAW mainly, except for the odd, classic chrome shots, because I'm really falling in love with that. What do we call those? Film emulsions or film simulations?
Emulation or simulation.
So yeah, I'm really enjoying that. But yeah, I shoot RAW, and then I have my own Lightroom presets that I've refined over the years. Some of them are really harsh, some of them are really light. And I think in those two sets of images, you could see that the ukulele ones had a very, very almost pastel gray tone to it, even though that's a bit of an oxymoron. And whereas the other ones, the shots of Jackie were a lot darker and harsh.
You try to emulate some of the film look you get with your Leica when you shoot digital, or you try to keep the two things separated when you post-process your images?
I'm definitely inspired. I shoot with Ilford as my choice of film, XP2 specifically, just because of the sheer convenience of the fact that it can be developed anywhere. And so that's typically my starting point. I try to see what it would look like that, and then I go from there.
All right.
Another thing I see on your site that you have a Fuji X Ambassador badge. What does that actually mean? How does one become a Fuji X Ambassador?
So it all started when I moved to Toronto almost 2 years ago now. I'll give you the long story. I had just seen Heather and Mathieu's post about the Fujifilm Italy meetup that had happened, and I had just moved to Toronto. I didn't know anyone, and I said, this is a great idea, and that will allow me to meet people and make friends. And so I posted on Twitter. I said, hey everyone, you should check this out, and is there anything like this in Toronto? Turns out there wasn't anything like that, and someone who now happens to be a really good friend of mine, Donovan Bond, who runs Fuji versus Fuji, kind of replied and said, hey, yeah, we should do something like this. So the two of us started talking, and the two of us, with the help of a local store, namely Othman Kammah, kind of put together what happened to now be Fuji Tuesday. The X Ambassador thing came along because of this exposure through Fuji Tuesday. We reached out to Fujifilm Canada and said, we're trying to do this, and we'd really love your support where applicable or where available. And I think Fujifilm was, I don't want to say grateful, but happy with what we were doing and putting together a community and bringing the X series cameras almost to people's mind, where a lot of people that are now Fuji Tuesday members didn't have one initially. And I think there's not really any better way to describe an ambassador than someone that represents your brand. So I think it came about that way.
And now that you moved to the Bay Area, do you have any contacts there already that you are?
Yeah, absolutely.
Similar?
Yeah. So one great thing is when we did this co-sponsored event with Fujifilm and Othman Kammah over the summer, and took a lot of people to the Toronto Islands. So we took this big ferry boat and crossed over the water, and we're all stuck on an island. And luckily, someone from Fujifilm USA was visiting Toronto at the time, so they were part of the event. And so her and I have been chatting about what we can do to bring, not only bring Fuji Tuesday to the US, but develop a community here, because I think that's, despite the fact that there's a lot of ex-photographers in the US, I think the sense of community for Fujifilm is not quite here yet. A lot of people use their cameras, but I think we can do a better job as a community to bring everyone together and help each other or learn from each other.
Cool. So what's? Sorry, Mathieu, go ahead.
No, just say I think it's a very nice thing that you were able to build this Fuji Tuesday works, and it's nice to see also the Fujifilm support. I mean, that I always find within the Fujifilm community, the Fujifilm user are very interesting communities. I mean, again, when we first met the Italian Fujifilm club on Facebook, which I think Ugo you joined them as well a couple of times, and I was really surprised to see just people that met randomly on the internet, but as soon as they were together, it looks like they were friends for years. And so that's something that we also really interested in, because it's nice to get out of the internet and get out of the virtual and actually meet people in reality. And as you said, you can can meet new friends, can meet new interesting content for business as well. So I mean, it's definitely something that I always encourage to develop and continue. So I'm glad that now after Toronto you can do something in the US as well.
Hopefully.
How is the photo walk meetup scene in Wales?
Well, we're gonna work on it. I mean, we already have some good Fujifilm contacts and
Good.
other mirrorless contacts as well. So we can
Yeah.
something. And apparently, the Italian Facebook group wants to do the Italian UK meetup somewhere. Maybe
that would be
someday.
great. Because you know, when I think of Wales, I think of a country with lots of sheep and not many people. So.
It's true, there are a lot. But it's also a very nice country for landscape, so we could.
Yeah, sure.
That's,
So back to Othman. What do you have in store for the future? What does the future have in store for you, photographically speaking? Is photography going to be more important in your life? You're pretty young, I imagine. So you have if you have a day job, you probably have a long career in front of you. But how do you see the balance between your photography and your work?
I think that's a very expensive question. I think photography will always be there. You know, now that it's something I fell back into, and it's something I'm passionate about as an art and as a way to remember. I think it's always going to be there. You know, getting back into film was mainly because I wanted to create those memories and be able to print those moments, and I think, like I said, I think it's always going to be there. As far as balance goes, I've never had a problem, you know, striking a balance there. You know, like I said, it's a passion, and I think you can always find time and make time for your passions.
True. So do you have an ambition to? You don't have an ambition to become a full-time photographer or artist and leave off your photography, right? Holding tight to your day job.
I don't know that anyone has that ambition initially. I mean, some people do, and that's what they want to do, and it's their dream, and they achieve that, and it's amazing. And one great example is Kale from Vancouver, who's a Fujifilm X photographer, and he was kind of, or not even kind of, he was basically my mentor as I was transitioning into Fuji. He was there for me answering questions and things like that. And I'll let him tell his story, but he took a giant leap of faith in becoming a professional photographer, and he worked out amazingly for him. For me, I think I'm really happy where I am. You know, life changes, life happens. I don't know what's really in store for me. I try not to plan. I just embrace what comes along, and that ambition is not there at the moment, no.
Yeah, I was listening to Kale's interview on the Candid Frame a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a really great guy.
Yes, very much so. He's actually coming down to the Bay Area in 6 days, I think, so excited to hang out again.
Yeah, I'd love to be more in the U.S. in general. It looks like, with respect to Italy and Europe, lots more activity and meetups and photo walks and cool stuff, conferences, trade shows going on. Sometimes here we feel a bit in the backwaters of the empire, so to speak. So
but you do have
I'm
some
a
of
bit
the
envious.
you do have some of the greatest people, though. You know, Marco, Rafael, just to name a few, and the sense of community is even greater. I think because maybe of those limitations, everyone's coming together even closer, and everyone wants to be a tighter community. So, yeah, I mean, there's trade-offs, like you said. You have that, and I have to build the community here, and I think everyone wants that. I think we just need to all get together.
Yeah. Okay, so any other topic that you would like to tell us about? Or
Well, perhaps one question, which since it's recent news, and might interest in our viewers, if you have had a look at the new lenses that Fujifilm is currently showing in Japan, and what do you think about it? I mean, for example, there's a full macro lens and some other interesting lenses. So what do you think about that?
yeah, let me just interrupt a second,
Yeah.
Matthew. We know what we are talking about, but maybe some of the people that listen to this don't. And Fuji just announced. I don't think they really announced them officially, but they put them on the roadmap, which is a pre-announcement. They're going to release a new version of the 35 with an f2 aperture. They confirmed the 16-114.
Yeah.
And speaking of macro, the 120 millimeters macro.
Yeah, so I think they're doing very interesting things at this point. It also makes me think that they feel like they have an established lens lineup. The three that you just named are very specialized in a way. Something like the 16 millimeter is very geared towards a lot of different specialties, actually. Something like street photography. I know people like Marco are very, very excited for that. Astrophotography, which I'm starting to dabble into, so I'm excited to see what that's going to be able to do. The 120 millimeter macro, as you probably guessed, is something I'm very excited about. And the 35 f2, that one kind of left me a bit curious. I think the great thing about it is the fact that it's weather sealed, and we'll finally have a weather sealed prime to put on the weather sealed body like the XT1. Not to fuel the rumor fire, but something like a 35 millimeter f2 that small, to me looks like it's, especially weather sealed, to me looks like it's perfect for street photography. And I think it just shows us where Fuji thinks they're going with the next, maybe the next X Pro body, just because it would just make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, and I'm as excited as everyone else to see what happens.
I think they also showed a lens cap, similar to what Olympus has in the Micro Four Thirds lineup, and so that's also interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Fuji has really built in a few very short time frame an amazing lens lineup. They're covering all the basics and more. And I'm always upset when on forums and so on somebody, okay, Fuji announced the 1655 f2.8, which is quite a big, massive lens. And people are complaining, oh, that doesn't make any sense. That completely invalidates the whole philosophy of having smaller cameras. And I reply, well, nobody's forcing you to buy those lenses. Stick to your 27 millimeter pancake lens, and you'll be happy. Why do you have to complain? Some people just like to complain.
I mean, I had a chance to play with it, the 16 to 55 2.8. On our last Fuji Tuesday event, which was, I want to say, late January, and it is big, but it's not nearly as big as the full frame equivalent, and I think that's what people forget is that we got so used to high quality, very small primes, because of their nature. Something like a 35 1.4 is obviously going to be smaller than a 90 millimeter f2 or a 16 to 55 2.8. I think people just need to put things in perspective and realize that the key thing about these lenses is that Fuji is not sacrificing quality. And I think all the reviews have shown that it's a very remarkable piece of optics. And I think any smaller, they may have had to start sacrificing on quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it suits the needs for professional photographers. I mean, if you're doing events and weddings, you might use a lot of these kind of lenses, and the same goes for the 50 to 140. I mean, yes, it's a telephoto lens, it's big, but if you compare it to a DSLR equivalent, it's still smaller. And I mean, in the end, you have the choice. You can go with prime lenses, you can go with zoom lenses now. And I mean, I think it's when a system grows as fast as the system is growing, I think it's normal to get all these different lenses.
And yeah, and a company is in the market to make money, and they make money if they sell to more people. And the professionals, like the weddings, they've been using the 2470 f2.8 on Nikon and Canon. They will say, okay, I cannot switch to Fuji because they don't have that kind of lens that I use every single time. And
I think the 24 to 70 equivalent and the 70 to 200 equivalent, I think they are the two most sold professional lenses on DSLR system, both from Canon, Nikon, and so I mean every profession has those lenses in their bag. So it's just normal that Fujifilm designed the equivalent lenses. I think it just makes sense.
So you're waiting for the X Pro 2, but you don't have any insider information about characteristics or anything? Nothing that you can talk about.
Yeah, let's leave it at that.
Fine. So I want to thank you again for being our guest today. I think it's been a very inspiring and interesting conversation. Where can people go to find you online?
Yeah, so if you look at Twitter, my handle is just Othman Kammah. So if you look at the name right here, just remove the space, and you'll be able to find me on there. And then from there, you'll find all the different links. But thank you very much for having me, guys. As I mentioned before we started filming, you've been putting out some extremely great content with some fantastic people before me, and so when I got your email, I was very honored and very excited to be part of this, and so thanks again.
Yeah, we like your work, and yeah, we had some great people. We're going to have more, so I encourage our followers to stay tuned. We're going to branch into maybe a bit different format from now on. We had a panel discussion on the new news from Olympus. We're going to do more of that beside the traditional interviews. So definitely everybody should stay tuned on our news on our channel. And Mathieu, where can people find you?
Well, they can find us on mirrorlessons.com and all the related social networks. They just have to look for Mirrorlessons on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and Pinterest probably, and other social networks as well. So we are quite active on all of them.
And as for me, people can find me. We publish those episodes on the fstoplounge.com website, and me personally can find me everywhere online with my name or my website ucphoto.me. So thanks again for coming here today, and very much appreciated, both of you, and I hope to see you soon again.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.